Hello there, everybody. Jacob Rees-Mogg decided to go on an anti-French rant during his opening monologue for his GB News show. A rant that wouldn't have even taken place if he hadn't have gotten completely the wrong end of the stick, as per usual, by the way, regarding an exclusive story the Daily Mail published about the French Navy escorting 2 migrant boats from French waters into British waters during heavy fog. I'm going to begin by reading the article before filling in the gaps they missed, before playing Rees-Mogg's highly reactionary response. So let's just take a look at the article, shall we? So the article is titled, French warship tells cross-channel ferry to change course so it can escort small boats containing 90 migrants and hand them over to Britain. Warship's officer told ferry to make a detour so it could hand over 90 migrants. Controversial manoeuvre delaying ferry's journey happened in fog at 10:27 a.m. And the main body of the article reads, a cross-channel ferry was forced to change route by a French warship on Easter Sunday so it could escort 2 migrant boats to the UK, the Daily Mail can reveal. The P&O ferry Spirit of Britain was told to make the detour so the naval vessel could hand over 90 migrants to the border force craft Typhoon, waiting to bring them to Dover. The controversial manoeuvre, delaying the ferry's journey, happened in thick fog at 10:27 a.m. In the message to the P&O ferry, the warship's female officer says, in stilting English, oh dear, quote, I am currently ahead of you for 3 nautical miles, about to start operation with 2 small migrant craft and border force Typhoon. Is it possible for you to take a wide berth on your port side? Unquote. The Spirit of Britain's officer responds by correcting her estimated distance between the vessels, saying it is 5 nautical miles. He adds, quote, unfortunately, due to the shipping traffic, we can't come to port in restricted visibility, so we will alter course to starboard. Unquote. Charts show the ferry changing route to the right before returning to its course and entering Calais. The French warship steams on, escorting the migrant boats to the border of French and English waters, where Typhoon took them aboard and on to Dover just after 11 a.m. A private shipping company, under contract to the government, picked up the abandoned migrant boats at the same spot and brought them to Kent later in the morning. Charts reveal the warship, Alpha 602, had been on search and rescue operations to find migrant boats leaving the coast near the port of Gravelines since 5:31 a.m. on Sunday. But instead of turning the overcrowded rubber boats back to France, the warship can be seen escorting them towards Britain. Vessel tracking websites show the warship and Typhoon liaising mid-channel for the handover. The British Coast Guard, based in Kent, was heard by fishermen inquiring about the progress of the transfer and the altered Spirit of Britain's route on various public radio channels on Sunday morning. Fishermen said that the incident, which happened in the world's busiest shipping lane, was a, quote, dangerous operation which could have cost lives of migrants and seamen. One fishing boat skipper said, quote, visibility was down to 100 metres because of heavy fog. The French warship made an erratic course through the shipping lane after telling the ferry to get out of its way. The sole aim of the operation seemed to be getting the 2 migrant boats out of French waters and handed over to the British as swiftly as possible. Unquote. A trawler skipper told the Mail from the Channel, quote, this operation should not have been happening in the foggy conditions. Unquote. The skipper added, quote, the migrant boats ought to have been stopped by the French Navy from leaving France in such bad weather. The enthusiasm for search and rescue operations by the French, even in very low visibility, at sea, is extraordinary. They appear to be grazing the waters off Calais and Dunkirk until they find a migrant boat, and then escorting it directly towards the UK. Unquote. Numbers of migrants reaching Britain have risen in a spell of calm, if foggy, weather in the week to Monday. Traffickers have sent more than 1,000, including 180 in 4 boats on Easter Sunday, 2 of which were escorted by the French warship. The Home Office, under pressure to remove 51,000 boat migrants from 400 UK hotels, is scrambling to find housing for the never-ending arrivals. It has proposed sites for 5,406, including a barge in Dorset, RAF Scrampton in Lincolnshire, a Ministry of Defence site in Essex, and a former prison in East Sussex. The UK has agreed to pay £480 million over 3 years to beef up measures by the French to stop crossings. There is to be a new detention centre near Calais, and beach patrols have been increased. But there has been no agreement to return migrants to France despite a special summit between Prime Minister Rishi Sunak and President Emmanuel Macron. A Home Office spokesperson said, quote, "Our small boats operational command is working alongside our French partners and other agencies to disrupt the people smugglers. Government legislation will ensure people arriving in the UK illegally are detained and promptly removed to their country of origin or a safe third country so we can stop the boats." Unquote. So, what the Daily Fail are not understanding is the money our government sent to the French is being used in exactly the way it was intended. They have massively increased their beach patrols and are building a detention centre in Calais. As soon as any of these boats hit the water, it becomes incumbent upon the French Navy to ensure these people do not die. If that means telling ferries to get the hell out of Dodge in heavy fog, so be it. Clearly, the Mail and Jacob Rees-Mogg, as you're about to see, are confused, upset and angry about why the French Navy escorted these boats to be picked up by the British. But as far as the French are concerned, these boats are now in a precarious position between life and death. Of course, I will get the usual gammon in the comments moaning at me when I bring up international law. Indeed, Article 98 of the UN Convention on the Law of the Seas, 1982, mandates that every state require its ships, quote, "to render assistance to any person found at sea in danger of being lost," unquote. If applied logically to migrant boats found in the English Channel, where its occupants' desired destination is the United Kingdom, it is only right the French safely assist them on their journey, because any attempt to intervene by sending them back to French shores could result in tragedy if a standoff occurred between the occupants of the boat and the French Navy. For the French, the safest, most sensible, law-abiding solution is to accompany them safely to British waters where they can be picked up. I know that will be unpalatable to some people, but that is simply how it must be. With that in mind, let's get on to Jacob Rees-Mogg's total lack of understanding of this crisis and how he uses it to repeatedly bash the French.
Sir Robert Walpole, the first Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, and the longest serving as it happens, he did over 21 years, which I was hoping for from Boris. But leaving that to one side, Sir Robert Walpole famously said, "I do not dislike the French from the vulgar antipathy between neighbouring nations, but for their insolent and unfounded air of superiority." And that seems to me to be the quotation of the day, if not the week, if not of the month, because what has just happened is so extraordinary. Migrant boats in the Channel, in French waters, were escorted from French waters, where they were the responsibility of President Macron, into UK waters, where we picked them up and where no doubt they will now be claiming asylum, and a British ferry had to be diverted to make way for the French. Now, we are paying £500 million to the French to help them police the border and stop migrants leaving and trying to get to this country illegally. What value for money are we getting? They seem to be taking our cash, but delivering migrants rather than delivering the goods. And there is a real problem, because actually it's quite fun to mob up the French, isn't it, to talk about Crécy and Agincourt and Trafalgar and Waterloo and the various intervening wars, and talk about General Wolfe and his great successes at the heights of Quebec. But actually, we need to get on with our closest ally, our closest neighbour, with a neighbour of fundamental importance to us, a big economy, a country with which we've had a relationship going back since the Dark Ages, since it was a country, really, and we, of course, became a country earlier than they did. But Macron seems not to be delivering the goods. He seems to have a policy that is deliberately unhelpful to the British, because the French Navy reports directly to the president. He is the head of their armed forces. He's their head of state. He is the real power within the land. France may not have a monarchy, but it has very much the direction of its state that Louis XIV would have been familiar with, a power centred in one man. And this one man not only doesn't deliver on the small boats, but also he's sucking up to China and saying that Europe should try and detach itself from the United States. Well, you will remember from yesterday that I think we shouldn't be too sentimental about the special relationship, but we have to recognize that the US is on our side in favor of freedom, of the rule of law, and China is not. China is a much bigger threat to us than the United States will ever be. And if the free world doesn't coalesce, if it doesn't work together through NATO and recognize where its interest lies, that is fundamentally risky for all of this. Who would be helping the Ukrainians if it were just left to the EU? Well, nobody. Very little would ever have happened. It required the sheer power, the depth, the resources of the US. And this is where what Macron's been saying has been so dangerous, because he was saying that we should not take America's view on Taiwan. And this gives the impression that we don't care about the fundamentals of the rule of law. Taiwan is an interest of the United Kingdom. It is an interest of the United States. It is an interest of the free world. And China's bullying of Taiwan is something that we as a free country should always be opposed to. And when our closest and most important neighbor is sucking up to the communist Chinese, we know something is wrong, and we see it with the failure of the French to help us with the small boats, actually delivering small boats to us. It is a real and serious problem. And of course, I want to know what you think at home.
God almighty, he just cannot go 5 minutes without sucking up to Boris Johnson, can he? Imagine 21 years of Johnson as Prime Minister. I'd rather move to Rwanda. Also, can you believe the staggering hypocrisy of Jacob Rees-Mogg, calling others out for their insolence and unfounded air of superiority? Unbelievable. Perhaps unsurprisingly, he makes a fundamental mistake that most heartless bigots tend to make, and proves just how much he really cares about the safety of the people in those boats. Because whether they are in French waters or not, if the best way of seeing them safely rescued is by the navy of two nations working together, that is what should happen, especially so on a treacherous, foggy day like it was. Can you also believe, regarding Taiwan, he said, quote, "This gives the impression that we don't care about the fundamentals of the rule of law," unquote. This from a guy who has spent the last few years trying his best to ignore the rule of law. Think the prorogation of Parliament, the Northern Ireland Protocol Bill, etc., etc., you name it. I mean, it was just completely unhinged. For him to be drawing parallels and finding links between a French Navy rescue mission in the English Channel to Taiwan, Russia, Ukraine, the United States, etc., etc. The ramblings of a madman. Anyway, thank you for watching. If you've made it this far, thank you for watching. As always, take care. Bye-bye.